Good morning, Nicole. How are you today?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I'm a big fan of your work.
Thank you.
Ever since I first saw your performance in Until Dawn in 2015.
I always laugh when people bring that up because it's such a kind of a one-note performance.
Huge congratulations on Suzume. I absolutely loved it, and I gave it 5 stars in my review. And your
Thanks.
performance was absolutely incredible. So huge congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad you
Y-
enjoyed it.
You're welcome. How was it seeing the film on the big screen at the premiere, and how was the audience reaction for you?
Ooh, well, when I had gotten sent the project to begin with, they sent me the screener in Japanese and I had to watch it on a little laptop. So obviously seeing it on the big screen, because some of these visuals are so like breathtaking and incredible, it was really cool. Thinking about the audience perception, honestly, I mean, it is a little nerve-wracking, because I felt so moved when I watched the Japanese version, and I just really
Mm.
hoped that people watching the English version would go through that same emotional journey. And obviously the vocal performance is a huge part of that. So I was nervous. I just really hoped to like pay honor to the original in the right way. And with dubbing and animation, it is challenging because it's already been animated. So I'm voicing these words to a mouth that is already moving, and I have to match those movements. And doing that is a very fine art because you have to, you can't, you got to get the syllables right. And so even though the direct translation for a line might be one thing, sometimes we have to find a way to make the translation work and make the animation fit that translation. So there's a lot of different elements to it. And I'm happy to hear though that you enjoyed it. And I think that, yeah, the audience did have a really great reaction to it. So that was a big relief.
Yeah, I first saw it in London at the BFI at the start of March with Makoto Shinkai actually in attendance as well. And I've spoken to him before when Weathering with You came out a few years ago. And I love how much of a master of the craft he is. I can't think of any of his films which aren't masterpieces.
Yeah.
And if I've done my research correctly, this is your first uh, feature film lead role for voice acting, and what a film to have as your milestone for that being Shinkai-san's latest masterpiece. How did this role come about? Was it your agent that got it for you, or were you directly approached? How did it come about?
Oh, I mean, it was just one of those things in life that I feel so lucky and grateful. Like I was kissed by God because it just landed in my lap. Like I didn't have to audition for it. And I was really like, what? I can't believe that they want me to do this, because I was also familiar with Shinkai before this film. So I already knew, yeah, going into it, like what, like you said, a master he is at what he does. And when I met him, he was like, yeah, I really like your voice, which is obviously he had to like my voice to like want me to do the project. But I was just like so astounded, like you like my voice. Because I don't know about you. I think most people, we don't like hearing ourselves, and
Mm.
like even with being an actor, I don't like watching myself. I don't like hearing myself, but it's obviously like, yeah, such a huge compliment when someone says something
Mm.
like that. And then watching the film back, and seeing, okay, this does work. Like because I feel really young at heart still, and the character is 17 years old. And I feel like a 17-year-old a lot of the times. Like I don't have it all figured out. I feel like there are a lot of 30-year-olds out there that just have more sense of authority to them. And so I feel like, yeah, I've always felt really young, and I think
Mm.
the role just, it made a lot of sense to me.
You mentioned obviously Shinkai-san liked your voice, which is amazing. What an absolute legendary compliment that is. I'm just
Yeah.
curious to know how much liaising you did with him as I know that for dubs, you're usually working with a different director, different team for regionalization, amongst other things as well. So how much work on your take on the character through your performance did you do with Shinkai?
I didn't speak to him until I met him at the premiere. So I
Oh
don't
wow, okay.
know. Yeah, I don't know how much he was communicating with our American director, a man, Bill Millsap, who had a really firm grasp on the emotional arc. And he was so helpful in, helping me get the performance to where it needed to be, because I'm used to acting on camera where I can use my whole body to express myself.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've done animated things before, I've done voiceover before, but nothing to this scale. And as we're saying, there's so many emotional moments in this movie, and there's action, like there's a lot in there. So Bill, our director, was really helpful in helping me get the performance to where it was. And his direction was extremely helpful.
I love how, although both your performance and that of Nanakahara are perfect for the languages that they're spoken in, you both give such a unique voice to Suzume, which really elevates her character and story. When working on the film, obviously working with the director as well, how did you aim to put your own unique voice to Suzume?
Well, that's not something I really consciously think about. I feel like as an actor, for me, I just sort of approach it with how much like truth can I, or where can I find the truth in this for myself? And I mean, it sounds a bit arrogant perhaps, but that's just my, not, I just do that, I guess. No, because I think that's why as actors we get chosen for the roles that we do, because we fit them. And there's something about my voice that works for Suzume. And I've done a lot of comedy. And so finding her kind of goofy, awkward, like weird moments, that's very easy for me to lean into. It's really fun for me to do. So yeah, it wasn't really a process of like, how do I find this character, so much as how do I bring as much truth to the character and, express that through my voice.
Do you relate yourself to Suzume at all, or her story, or maybe one of the other characters? Do you really connect with any of them or the surrounding world on a deep emotional level at all?
Definitely. I think at the heart of Suzume's like, journey as a character is a girl who has, experienced loss, and then she sort of opens herself up again. She's inspired by this love that she feels for Sota to kind of be vulnerable and take risks and go on this journey of, closing these doors that is dangerous, and it's, stepping into the unknown for her. And it's also about her making peace with the past as she does that, as she kind of, takes these leaps of faith and is brave. It's her also like being like, okay, this thing happened to me, and I can also move on and do all these other things at the same time. And that is something that I definitely relate to. And I think anyone who's had their heart broken can relate to that, heartbroken by a romantic love or family, someone dies, or, you lose a job that you really wanted, whatever it is. I think we all have to go on that journey at some point of, acknowledging the loss that we feel, and then also being brave again and opening up to the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I alluded to earlier, Makoto Shinkai is a master at blending the harsh yet reaffirming human elements of getting older and the coming of age drama, but also he's able to add all those fantastical components that makes anime such a captivating art form. And obviously with this particular piece, the disaster element, a very real disaster element from the 2011 tsunami, which devastated the east of Japan. Obviously, those in Japan will remember that well. But what do you think it is about the writing especially for this film, and the way those themes are presented on screen that will resonate with a worldwide audience and transcend that barrier we mentioned earlier between East and West.
Yeah, well, certainly that tragedy probably hits close to home for more people in Japan, obviously, who experience it, just like Americans, you know, who've been through something like 9/11 or any disaster that strikes, you know, just geographically closer, you know, people who have been affected by it. But I think it, you know, her journey back to visiting these places and sort of experiencing them, seeing them in a new way. They're now these beautiful landscapes. And I think it speaks to this sense of, there's this Japanese phrase, ichigo ichie, and it means like, it basically is a very poetic way of saying like that we only experience moments in life one time in one specific way, and that there's beauty in that you can never replicate something exactly the same way. And that's like the experience of life, is even going back to a place after it's been destroyed, seeing it in a new way is its own experience. And you can look back and say, wow, like you have all these memories that you know, maybe inform who you are as a person, or you remember, you take with them for the rest of your life. But it's really at that the essence of it is like enjoying the moment and like really valuing that, because it only happens once. And even if it's horrible, you know, there are things that we can learn, and you know, life's not beautiful without the ugly stuff too.
So going back to how much of a master Shinkai is, how much of a fan of his work were you before signing on to the project, and why do you think that his influence in anime as a whole is as much of a worldwide phenomenon as it actually is today?
Well, yeah, I remember seeing Your Name in theaters when that came out, and I was just like blown away by it. I remember there was a lot of buzz around it at the time, and I was like, what is this anime movie? Because I grew up watching a lot of Miyazaki films, but Shinkai, maybe he wasn't, you know, US audiences, I certainly wasn't as familiar with him at that point. But when I saw that movie, I was like, wow, this, you know, just absolutely astounded by it. So it was a huge fan ever since then. And I just think, yeah, he's really masterful in how he can create these beautiful stories. They're visually gorgeous to watch, and they're so moving. Like, he brings so much heart to his characters. And so I think that, you know, that's universal. People are always going to want to watch something that's beautiful and that makes them feel something, which his movies definitely do.
Going back to the production of the film, what were some of your personal highlights in the booth, and also which moments of the film, without spoilers, do you think that audiences will laugh at or maybe cry at?
Well, that's really hard to talk about without giving away spoilers. That's really hard, but there's so much comedy woven into the story, like little moments where you'll find yourself laughing. And I mean, that's life, you know, you could be on some serious journey or going through something really hard, and there's always going to be a little glimmer of something that can make you laugh, or even if it's your friend, you know, and their weird facial expression, there's always something to laugh about or to take joy in. And I think that, yeah, the movie does a great job at weaving in those moments when you least expect them, you know. And Suzume is just, she's so human like that. You see her struggling at times, or feeling awkward, or being uncomfortable, or trying to like deal with a situation, like watching, you know, babysitting two kids, and she has like no experience with childcare, and it's absolutely overwhelming and horrifying for her, which is an experience that I've also had when I worked at the YMCA when I was like 17 years old. These kids would just like climb on top of me, and I was weirdly the only counselor that they would do that with, because they knew that they could get away with it. So really related to Suzume on that. But yeah, well, the scenes with the kids are really fun, I think. And then the final scene, again, I can't give it away, but it's really moving, and it's sort of about her revisiting her past. And man, yeah, I can't really say much more than that.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, the last scene is probably my favorite scene in the movie. It comes by surprise. Like it's not one of those scenes where you can be like, oh, and I bet this is gonna happen. You know, it just totally takes you by surprise, and yet it fits and works so well. And yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. And just one final nice little fun question after that hard question, to end on. What are some of your, you mentioned obviously Miyazaki is a influence of yours, and someone whose work you've watched a lot of. But what would you say is some of your favorite anime series or films? It can be obviously recent ones or classic ones. I'm just sort of
Yeah.
curious to see what your cup of tea is.
Oh, well, I was a big Sailor Moon fan growing up. Loved
Nice.
Sailor Moon. I always identified most with Sailor Jupiter. She was kind of like good at everything, and she had the like
Mhm.
long brown ponytail. And I think, yeah, being a little girl, I was like, that's me. But I wasn't good at everything. I think I wanted to be though. And I also watched a lot of Doraemon. I don't know
Mhm.
if you're familiar with that one. But one of the most like kind of impactful anime experiences I had when I was younger was, I'm sorry, I've done so many of these interviews now, I forget like if I've already mentioned this here, but it's called Grave of the Fireflies. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's this anime movie about two young kids and they're trying to survive World War II. And
It's a tearjerker. It's heavy stuff.
so heavy. And I remember being like 8 years old when I watched that and
Oh
like
wow.
sitting down, like, oh, here's an anime, like blah, 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 blah. And then, yeah, you're like, oh my God, this is so serious. But I think that's what's like so cool about the genre is that it can sort of approach any subject and make it approachable for kids. Like it's not like it was like an inappropriate movie for me to be seeing at that time necessarily,
Mhm.
but it was very heavy subject matter. And um I just think that anime has the ability to kind of make people really suspend their belief. You're not thinking about anything else but these characters when you're watching it. And, you can't think about the CGI or how the actor's hair looks that day or whatever it may be. So I think that's the really amazing thing about anime. And yeah, those were definitely some of my favorites growing up.